So can Chelsea make it through to the knockouts of the Club World Cup? That is the huge question as they prepare to face Espérance in Philly, the same location where Chelsea lost against Flamengo on Friday. And really how Chelsea are going to react and respond after what was a very disappointing performance in Philadelphia. Will we see major changes from Maresca? Will he rectify those issues that we saw exposed by Flamengo? And will that rotation bring a level of excitement and momentum? And that will propel Chelsea forward into the knockouts where they could face instantly some very big teams. But as we know, as I think Friday demonstrated, shocks are quite frequent in this competition. And I think from a psychological point of view and just the nature of the finances involved in this tournament, those mismatches maybe, are very much shortened, not just by the conditions, by maybe the lack of knowledge from European teams for teams they've never played before, but also because the money that's on offer here is life-changing, is game-changing really, for especially teams outside of the Premier League, Europe, the Champions League, where so much of the money in world football has kind of been dominated from a commercial point of view for a very long period of time. So that is why there is always going to be caution going into these games, even if Chelsea are absolutely favourites to win here, as they were in the LAFC game. But I think there has to be some trepidation there. And will that again force Maresca or kind of lead him to think, I'm going to play more of a conventional starting lineup? But I don't think that worked on Friday. So please do give me your predicted lineups in the comments below. So Espérance obviously won their second game against LAFC, putting themselves in contention, level on points with Chelsea heading into this game. Now there is a scenario where Chelsea can get through this game without having to win, because they do have a better goal difference. That effectively means a draw, and very likely also meaning that Flamengo, I think, expectedly will beat or at least avoid defeat against LAFC. Maybe not, but we will see, and that will put Chelsea into the last 16. I think it's unlikely now Chelsea are going to finish top of this group, which they hoped, because effectively then what you're hoping for is that, Flamengo, as I say, who've been brilliant so far in this tournament. You saw their performance on Friday. It's a big moment for them. They've got a momentum. I think they will quite easily beat LAFC, who have been the weaker team within this group so far. But in terms of Chelsea, in terms of the conditions around this game, so before even getting to who's going to play, who's not going to play, the tactical side of it, the conditions are apparently impossible to train in. This is a report from Nazar Kinsella, and others have been reporting it as well, that Maresca has basically referred to it as impossible to organise training sessions at the moment, normal training sessions, amid a code red severe heat warning in Philly at the Club World Cup, rising to 37 degrees. The 45% humidity means it feels more like 45 degrees. And temperatures on Monday were predicted to top 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 37 degrees Celsius, for the first time in 13 years. Now, we have had a bit of a heat wave in the UK, which is quite unbearable for us. But I mean, I can only imagine, and having experienced American humidity a couple of times in my life, yeah, it's a completely different level. So those conditions, I think, whether you think they're excuses or not, I mean, we do have some players, South American players, who play at this, either earlier in their career or are used to doing it on international duty. But, I think it does play some part. And obviously, maybe that fatigue, that tiredness that could have been there even before this tournament from a Chelsea perspective is only being heightened by this. And we're not quite seeing the peak of Chelsea powers in this tournament. And will that factor again into the selection? So Maresca has also spoke pre-game about some of the players who might not play here. So Reece James didn't train because he was ill before this game, and Levi Colwill also suffering with illness. So he has already promised to make some rotation. Now, we did say, and we did hear these kind of rumours before the Flamengo game, and I think there was an anticipation because of those quotes we were going to see radical change, and really we didn't. Yes, Malo Gusto starting was a surprise, but it's not like he's a complete outsider. Now, I want to bust this myth instantly, because there's been this chatter that Maresca cannot change his team in a radical way. He cannot play players on the fringes or new players because of some agreement that Chelsea had signed with FIFA before this tournament to basically play their strongest lineup. Now, Chelsea effectively breached his contract by playing Liam Delap the other night. We've seen Man City make a host of changes. We've seen Real Madrid make a host of changes. The idea Enzo Maresca cannot play any of his new players and cannot rotate is just farcical. It doesn't pass a smell test. So I don't really buy that as the reason why we have to keep playing the same 11 over and over again. And for me, don't really buy the argument when I see not only Delap starting, but you see Malo Gusto starting. You did not have to start him the other night against Flamengo, and that really cost Chelsea. So there is a part of me that wonders, from a PR point of view, and this is not why you should be starting someone. I more think it's a stronger fitting and just more relevant to talk about starting a player because they're the best football player for that position and the most effective player. But if Santos starts, it kind of ends a lot of conversation. You know, it ends the concern that he's completely out of the plans. However, because this has become a game that is not a dead rubber in terms of Chelsea's qualification or being secured, I think there will still be an instinct for him to stick Maresca with the players he trusts. However, I think the performances, because they've been a bit lackluster, I still kind of feel we are lacking something. We are missing a trick by bringing in these new players and seeing how they do and the motivation and the influence and kind of the aggression they maybe bring to earn their spots and to really put out in front of everyone really that they are ready to play first team minutes. It's the thing we always say about young players, right? When they get an opportunity, how impactful, how motivated, how focused they looked, because to them that those chances don't come liberally. Those chances don't come easily, as say to a 60 million signing. So I'd like to see some of that, right, whilst keeping some of those players. I don't think it's going to be radically like 5, 6, 7 changes. However, I think if James isn't going to be ready to play this game and you want to rotate, I think there's an obvious alternative there. Will we see a bit of tweaking in the centre-back department? Can you keep playing Motka Correa? A lot of questions. So this is my starting 11. And as ever, please do give me your lineups in the comments below and we'll see how they differ. I cannot see Robert Sanchez being dropped. I just can't. He is clearly the first choice, and no matter how much people get frustrated about it, he has been the first choice now for a long period of time. Unless Maresca watched because it wasn't like Sanchez was complete. I've seen worse Sanchez performances. I know people always get frustrated about Sanchez, and he did at times, as he usually does, play a few wayward passes. And I think we need to upgrade in that position. But listen, we've had worse Sanchez performances where his errors directly lead to goals. So I think he will remain the first choice, and I think he will play every game in the Club World Cup unless he gets suspended or injured. In the back four, if James ain't playing, for me it's quite obvious. Josh Achimpong should be starting here. He hasn't started a game so far. I seriously start to comprehend what Maresca is thinking if he plays Malo Gusto for a second straight game after watching his performance against Flamengo. And then if you're Josh Achimpong, if you're other players, I completely justify it and would understand why players start to get frustrated, because his performance level, Gusto, has been so poor and cost Chelsea for the two first Flamengo goals. I mean, came from him losing his man or losing Jules, and you just can't have it for a game where Chelsea need to be getting over the line. So I think Josh Achimpong deserves that start. He's there for a reason, and hopefully Maresca capitalises on that and uses him in a starting role, because we know he can play that inverted role. I have confidence he could shift into a right centre-back position, even in a back three, if you wanted him to, in possession, out of possession. And I think that's something that people want to see, and also the ability for him to grow from a young player into more of a reliable squad player. So I'd like to see that this season. I think Tosin may come back in there. He's a player that I think has gained quite a bit of trust by Enzo Maresca. It's usually more of a tactical thing. We know that Tosin has been used more so sparingly at the end of last season when he feels there's a really big set piece issue that he has to deal with. But Chelsea were exploited on set pieces on a Friday, and I just wonder whether Tosin will come in for Trevor Chalobah. Levi Colwill, I actually think has still looked good this tournament. I think he's had to cover for a lot of other people. So I'd like to keep Levi in the back four. And unfortunately, it also means keeping Motka Correa. Until Chelsea sign sufficient left back, the only alternative here is you move Josh Achimpong or Malo Gusto to left back or right back. That's all you do at the moment. Maybe at worst you move Levi Colwill to left back. We've seen obviously Pochettino do that. I don't think we've seen Maresca do that. it's an indictment that Cucurella has to keep playing. It's one of those areas that I worry might slip under the radar this summer. You may think, and I agree, there are kind of key positions Chelsea need to upgrade, but I'm going to keep on saying this every time I pick Cucurella because he can't keep playing every single game. We need to have depth. We've got depth in other areas, and that isn't being capitalised on. Here, we kind of have no depth, and it's really showing at the moment. Then we get into midfield. I think because of the nature of it being a game Chelsea need to get a positive result, they can't just sit back and do nothing. I still think Caicedo will start, but I wouldn't mind seeing Dario Asugo get given a start, or Romeo Lavia. Any of the three I'd be quite content to see start here. Asugo starting to play that midfield kind of depth role for Caicedo, someone who can play that deep role. Lavia did come off the bench the other night, but started the LAFC game, and again is someone that I know a lot of people are very excited about in terms of playing that deep role, his progressive passing through the lines, and very much helping Chelsea's build up. So I think any of the three here, I just keep on stressing I'd like to see Caicedo be given a rest, because if you can rest him and we get through, then of course you're starting him very likely against, say, Bayern Munich. Of course he'd start that game. So again, Asugo, Lavia, I'm quite relaxed on any of the three starting this game because I'm just more intrigued, especially in the case of Asugo, to see what he could do. He did come off the bench, so he has got minutes so far in this Club World Cup, which is different to who I'm going to pick next to start Andrey Santos. Listen, you've got midfielders. You've got midfield depth now, Enzo. You know, this is where I think we should be starting to see these players come into the first team. I think Chelsea lacked a real control, a real influence in central midfield. There was a lack of control in Friday's game. Chelsea very rarely were able to get on the ball. Their passing, just being able to complete passes, was a real struggle. And I think getting on the ball, being able to progress the ball, being able to press the opposition back is going to be something Chelsea are going to need to develop pretty quickly and regain if they want to advance any further in this tournament. And I just think that aggression, that also willingness from Andrey Santos to drive with the ball, to get forward, to be an attacking influence, alongside Enzo Fernandez, I think I'd be quite excited, and I think a lot of people were to see a midfield three of, say, Caicedo, Santos and Fernandez, because it looks like a midfield that could start massive games for Chelsea in the future. So seeing those 2-8s and seeing how they dovetail, seeing how they rotate, I think would be really exciting. It's not like Maresca is completely opposed to experimenting, as he referred to it the other night. I think this is much more experimenting. I think it's putting 2-8s there, particularly Santos, and seeing how he can develop. And what it does from a narrative point of view is suddenly people can go, well, he's in the starting 11, he's getting chances, he's getting minutes. That would give him sufficient minutes, at least 45 minutes at the very least, in a Chelsea shirt. And seeing how that plays out, I think that Santos, if he is part of the plans, we need to start seeing it. And either off the bench here, if he goes 3 games without playing at all, I don't really know what they expect is going to happen elsewhere. The conversation will continue. I'm again a bit conflicted because, as you've seen, I've played Caicedo, I've played Santos, I've played Fernandez, I've played a natural right back. Where does Cole Palmer fit into this? And there is a part of me that wonders whether Cole Palmer deserves a bit of a rest. Again, I know a lot of people instinctively will think to themselves, it's a game Chelsea need to win, why aren't you playing Cole Palmer? And I understand that. Maybe you rotate where you do Caicedo, Asugo, Lavia, one of the 3, Santos as kind of a midfield 2, and then you have Palmer as the 10. If Palmer is going to play the role he did on Friday, I think it's a bit of a waste of time. I think that, obviously we need Palmer in that central role. So I'm not opposed to starting Cole Palmer here, but he has played an enormous amount of football. And again, if we get through, who's starting that game against Bayern Munich, if it is Bayern Munich, it's going to be Cole Palmer, it's going to be Moises Caicedo, it's going to be the players that we have trusted. And I think if you can give Palmer a rest here, he hasn't looked up to it so far in this tournament. Is that the worst thing in the world? I don't think it is, especially when you have other players who maybe could influence things and take up that burden, and then you've got him off the bench to come on and maybe impact things later in the game. Because from the Club World Cup, if we contextualize it just as the Club World Cup so far, other than the pass in the build-up to the second goal against LAFC, in the first 2 games, that's, Palmer hasn't exactly, taken the games by the scruff of the neck, has really dominated from a Chelsea point of view. I'm not saying it's easy to drop Cole Palmer, but I just wonder whether this is where you do it, because you're probably not going to do it for the rest of the tournament if Chelsea continues to progress. Madueke, I think, will come back into a right-wing position here. Delap as the number 9. He's obviously going to start as number 9 again because Nicholas Jackson so stupidly got himself sent off. And Pedro Neto on the left. He scored in the first 2 games. I think he'll continue to play here. My hope is that Liam Delap gets more of a look in and we actually are able to see him play more as a centre forward in a game where Chelsea are probably going to have much more of the ball, hopefully more control and more ability to get forward and create opportunities. Because Chelsea was so outplayed the other night, other than the first half, that first period of the first half when Delap was going into challenges, he was linking up quite well with Pedro Neto. Really, there was not much else in the performance by the time he got taken off for Jackson before he got sent off. So you want to make a firmer judgment here. You want to be able to see him and actually see how he works around with his teammates. So that is my 11. I mean, maybe I'm a bit too radical in terms of the changes I'm making. But if the conditions in Philly are so bad, if there is concern about player fatigue, if Maresca is saying about rotation, and also because of the lackluster nature, really, of the first 2 performances, if being frank. I mean, there were some, very poor kind of concerning periods, even in the LAFC game. You want to inject new life into this team. You want to bring more inspiration. You want to bring players in who are hopefully going to tip the scales and also add something new that then hopefully opens up new opportunities. And I think Andrey Santos does that. I think even seeing how Dario Suga does, I think giving Josh Achimpo minutes makes a lot of sense. And hopefully Madueke, Delap, Neto, that's your front three at the moment. That may change with new signings coming in. But that is my 11 for the final group game. And listen, if Palmer starts, let's play him central. Let's get him on the ball, and hopefully he can dictate things in a very big way. I'm not quite signing up to the belief that Palmer hasn't played well for a long period of time, because how quickly have we forgotten the Conference League final second half when he basically won that final on his own for Chelsea. Chelsea, I hope, can very much rekindle some of that good feeling, that good momentum. Because at the moment it feels like, with the performances and obviously losing that game on Friday, it's dragging, the season's dragging. These players don't look up for it. They don't look like they're ready for this tournament. And actually, is it better Chelsea get back home quickly and these players can rest? But I think now is the time for Chelsea to show that they are still here to compete. And then you put yourself in the knockouts where anything can happen, and hopefully Chelsea can rise to the occasion if they do face the might of some of Europe's biggest teams. So those are my thoughts. Please do get involved in the comments down below, and I will see you again very, very soon. All the best.